Hello and welcome to Words of the Wild, a podcast brought to you by the Scottish Wildlife Trust. My name is Rachel and I'll be your host for this episode, and as usual, I'm joined by my brilliant colleague and co-host.
Hello everyone, my name is Ed, glad to be back. What are we talking about this week, Rachel?
Yeah, so today we are going to be talking a little bit about policy and advocacy. So policy plays a large part in our conservation work. And at the Trust, our policy team work really hard to encourage urgency and leadership from Scotland's decision makers when it comes to tackling key threats to, the twin biodiversity and climate crises. So today we're going to be hearing from Kirsty Richards, who is the Terrestrial Policy Manager here at the Trust. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about the Trust's policy work ahead of the 2026 Scottish Parliament election and the need to prioritise nature and ensure it's a core pillar of public policy. So here's Kirsty to tell us more.
Thank you very much for hopping onto the podcast with us today. So, Kirsty, your role is in our policy team. Could you just tell us a bit about your role and some of the work that you do here at the Trust?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. So I'm the Terrestrial Policy Manager within our policy and advocacy team. And my job is all about championing nature, making sure that wildlife, habitats, biodiversity all have a strong voice in Scotland's policy landscape. That means I spend a lot of time shaping our policies on issues like deer management, invasive non-native species, peatland and woodland restoration, and nature-friendly farming. I work closely with government officials, MSPs, agencies like NatureScot to influence policy and push for legislation that really supports nature. We do this collaboratively through networks like Scottish Environment Link and Stop Climate Chaos Scotland to really make sure that our collective voice is strong. But it's not just about external advocacy. A big part of my role is making sure our policy work connects with what we're doing on the ground as a trust. That's on our reserves and through projects like Riverwoods and the Cumbernauld Living Landscape, and vice versa. It's really important that we walk the talk and apply the same principles in our own work.
We're in Leith at the moment. We just walked past the Scottish Parliament building. So with the election, the upcoming Parliament election in mind, how has the Trust been preparing for that?
Yes, with the Parliament election on the horizon in spring 2026, it's certainly been a busy time for us. I would say ultimately we're working to make sure that nature isn't just an afterthought in party priorities. We really want it to be front and center. We've heard from MSPs and political party researchers that blogs are a really accessible way to get our messaging across. So with that in mind, we've published a series of blogs on why nature needs to be a top policy priority. This is designed to help political parties and voters recognize that challenges such as biodiversity loss, climate resilience, and land use are not fringe concerns. They're deeply linked to wider decisions being made at Holyrood on public services, economic strategy, and societal well-being. Building resilience across Scotland's society and economy means prioritizing nature and not sidelining it. So with that in mind, we're engaging directly with policymakers, sharing our recommendations, and encouraging them to commit to stronger protections for Scotland's wildlife and habitats. It's really about making sure that nature has a voice in the political conversation and that whoever forms the next government understands the urgency and opportunity of investing in a healthier natural environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like this idea that nature is not just beneficial to conservation. It's not just a kind of nice thing to have. It's key to a lot of really big issues. Mm-hmm. So we've talked a little bit about the manifesto that the Trust has been working on. What's involved in that? Can you tell us a bit more about kind of the stuff that's going into that, to the Trust's manifesto?
Yeah, absolutely. So a bit of context. Ahead of elections, parties will publish their manifestos outlining their top priorities for the next parliamentary session. It's basically a position statement across all the areas of public policy. For example, the SNP will be running on their goals of growing the economy, eradicating child poverty, tackling the climate emergency, and ensuring high quality and sustainable public services. So in essence, we are asking Scotland's political parties to take nature seriously, to deliver on these priorities, and reframe their approach to nature to see it as a tool for resilience. Our goal is really to have nature be seen as a solution to delivering against these other priorities, as opposed to just another problem that needs to be overcome. The messaging we're trying to get across is that nature is our fundamental life support system. It underpins everything, our whole lives, and connects all aspects of our society. It is essential to our food security. It helps us to mitigate climate change and can provide a cost-effective way to address its impacts. It provides secure, future-proof jobs and delivers multiple public services like clean water, flood and drought mitigation, and wildfire control and prevention. And as we've seen of some recent storm surges, this is all the more important in the changing climate that we're facing. So in our manifesto, we are asking parties to commit to 3 core principles to ensure that nature is valued, protected, and restored, all while Scotland moves towards a more resilient and prosperous future. The first is safeguarding and building resilience for the future. An example of this would be embracing nature-based solutions, such as the beaver, to mitigate flood and drought. Second is prioritizing nature in public policy. This looks like delivering robust statutory nature targets through the Natural Environment Bill. And third, securing investment and funding. For example, by investing in the proportion of agricultural funding which directly supports nature-friendly farming. The core message that we are trying to convey is that failure to invest in nature now will only cost us more in the long run. But by acting promptly, we can unlock future opportunities for growth, minimize long-term costs, and strengthen our ability to shape a sustainable and resilient future for generations to come.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a bit about nature-based solutions in the first series, and I think this manifesto is a great way of kind of pulling it all together, putting it at the heart of our policy work, and particularly with the election coming up, it's really, really important. Personally, I find policy as a whole, politics perhaps, quite hard to get my head around sometimes, and it can be quite hard to engage with. What's one thing that people can do to kind of encourage their politicians to really put nature at the heart of their policies?
Yeah, it can be quite daunting. The best way to have your voice heard is at the ballot box. Truly every voice counts in this election. I acknowledge that while it can feel quite overwhelming to sift through all the pre-election information and noise, but it is incredibly important to have your say if you want things to change. In the lead up to the election, I would recommend writing to your current MSP and other local decision makers, urging them to prioritize nature. Read the party manifestos when they are published and keep an eye out for which parties actually support nature in their policies. You can also attend campaign events and raise awareness within your community about why this election matters for nature and why nature matters to you. Now, I know you asked for one thing. Sometimes the simplest action, though, is to spend time outdoors. When you feel the benefits of nature firsthand, you're more likely to speak up for it and inspire others to do the same. And of course, you can have a look on our website, read our blog series, and learn more ways that you can get involved.
I love that the best way, your top tip to get involved in policy and politics, particularly around nature, is to go out and experience it. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's a key message that's coming from so many people that we're speaking to on the podcast is just go out and connect with it. So that's super interesting that even for something that feels sometimes a bit removed, it's still just as important to go out and connect with nature. And have you always worked in conservation or policy work within conservation, or come from a different background? How did you get into conservation policy?
Yeah, I've always been a big lover of the outdoors and nature. It's always brought me a lot of peace, and it's been something that's been really important to me my whole life. So after spending 5 years working for a large consulting firm in tax policy, I was really craving a bit of a change and something that was more directly relevant to my true interests. I've always had a policy background. I've worked in the Scottish Parliament, in the House of Lords, and I studied politics in my degrees. So I knew I wanted to work in the policy space, and working in conservation policy felt like the perfect marriage of my interests. So I applied to the Trust, thankfully got this role, and it's been a fantastic introduction to the conservation sector and really the good work that's being done by a whole host of organizations that work on different wildlife issues. And in Scotland as well, where I live and I feel very connected to my home natural environment.
And potentially putting you on the spot a little bit here, as someone who's kind of changed sectors, have you got any advice for somebody who's looking to start in conservation?
Yeah, I think coming from with a bit of experience in the public sector and then most of my experience in the private sector, I knew I was craving the experience of working in the third sector. It is very different. There are various constraints, like obviously money is a big issue in facing the charity sector. There just is not enough funding to fund the projects that we want to do completely. But the people who work in this sector are so genuinely interested in the topics that there's such momentum for change and there's such innovative appetite for meaningful change that I have a lot of faith in our sector to get things done So I found the work very inspiring, and I would say to anybody who's debating switching into our sector to just go for it. And I think you'll find your home, try out different organizations, but follow your interests. Our work life dominates a lot of our time, so I think working in something that comes easily to you, that you genuinely find interesting, I certainly value that change for myself, so I would recommend it.
That is a very good answer, and I think it's something, again, we've asked a few people for kind of their tips for people looking to start in conservation, and it's the same kind of message, do it because you love it.
Yeah.
And we're not in conservation for fame or fortune, to quote Rab, our reserves manager, but it's a brilliant place to work.
I would also add that your friends and family will love all the cute wildlife anecdotes that you start to learn. I feel every day I come home with a new charming fact about beavers, and people love it. So it's always something to talk about.
It's a good talking point for sure. Your job is obviously quite intense at times, and I imagine it's quite reactive. You've got to respond to things quite quickly and dredge through quite a few kind of heavy documents. Have you got a favourite place to go to connect with nature and kind of unwind after a really long day of reading policies or responding to things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm blessed with living in Edinburgh that we have access to such accessible urban green spaces. So I can be in a little patch of woodland within 5 minutes, basically. I can get to the sea within 30 by walking. I'm lucky that Edinburgh has a lot of places where I can go and just remember why we're doing this in the first place. The Water of Leith in Edinburgh is a particular favorite of mine. I walk the whole thing regularly, and there's so much wildlife that you can see along there. It's really sweet to see. And Scotland on a whole is pretty good about urban green spaces, and I think that if you're living in an urban environment, it's important to use them. It's a way to show that you value it, and it will continue funding if people are going to those places. And yeah, we're lucky to have such lovely parks in our city.
Absolutely, that's a really good answer. I think these urban patches and green spaces are absolutely fantastic, and they're such useful little spots that you can just nip off in a lunch break or after work or whenever that might be, and just kind of connect and relax for a little bit. It's like you say, it's kind of a really important thing that we should all be doing. So that's a great answer. Thank you again for chatting today, Kirsty.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kirsty, for chatting to us. That was really, really interesting, and it's such an easy way to break down policy, which can sometimes be, quite an overwhelming topic. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that and remind everyone that every voice counts. And like I say, whilst policy can feel overwhelming at times, it is incredibly important to have your say if you want things to change. Kirsty and our policy team have written a fantastic blog series called Take Nature Seriously, which you can find on our website. So I really recommend go grab a cuppa, have a read, and see what actions you can take as well, whether it's writing to your current MSP, urging them to prioritise nature, or whether it's raising awareness in your community about why this election really matters for nature. So yeah, definitely go check out the blogs.
Yeah, I really enjoy talking to Kirsty and our policy team. They all work so hard, and they work on some really, really high level stuff, but then are so good at breaking things down into a way that even I can understand. It's just they're so good at what they do. So brilliant to chat to Kirsty, and quite a nice little walk around Leith at the same time. But again, thanks to Kirsty for featuring there. So for our next feature, we are going to be hearing from Eloise and Rebecca from our Living Seas team. So they are working on a project called See the Connection. I'm not going to introduce this one too much because they say some fantastic stuff. So I think we should just get straight to that. So without further ado, here is Eloise and Rebecca. So welcome both Eloise and Rebecca to podcast. Eloise, obviously you featured last year. Rebecca, welcome. This is your first time on Words of the Wild, but it's lovely to have you both here. Thank you for spending some time talking today. So the first thing really, I guess, is obviously we caught up last year and talked about some of our Living Seas work. What's new? What's changed since we last caught up?
Yeah, thank you, Ed, for having us today. We've been doing so much work since we last spoke, so it's lovely to have this chance to catch up together. What can we tell you about? So we have finished our snorkel trail network. We completed the network at the end of 2024. So we now have a strong network of 13 trails all across Scotland. That's over 80 snorkel sites. So it's really, really impressive, to the point where we've actually been shortlisted for a Nature of Scotland award this year in the nature tourism category. So we're absolutely delighted. The communities are using the trails. We're getting great feedbacks from people. People are sharing videos and comments. We also help with the launch of a book this year called Snorkeling Britain. Emma and Gordon Taylor, they wrote this book, which is a guide to snorkeling all across Britain. And it was wonderful to be a part of the creation of that book. So snorkeling has been incredible this summer, and we even had Scotland's first snorkel festival, which took place in Eyemouth this summer too, with the Berwickshire Marine Reserve and other partners. So it's just been unbelievable for snorkeling this year in particular. And off the back of us finishing the snorkel trails, we launched an exciting new project called See the Connection.
Yes, and See the Connection is something that I want to talk a bit more about. So last year, the Trust finished up the Oceans of Value project, and that kind of laid the foundations for this new project in a way. Could you tell us a bit more about how See the Connection came to be?
The Oceans of Value project was based in Orkney, and so was asking people how they valued the marine environment and looking at different ways of capturing that. One of which was the community voice method, which is a social science method of interviewing people and then analysing the results and creating a film from that. And so the film was, an incredible engagement tool that we could use, that we took around Scotland at different events. And we're asking people the same sorts of questions about, what they valued about the marine environment, how they wanted to see it managed in future, and, thinking about sort of sustainable development of our coasts and seas. And so one of the things that really stood out as part of that project was we were doing the interviews at around the time when the Orkney Regional Marine Plan was just starting to be developed. So one of the last questions that we asked our interviewees was, when a plan is going to be developed, would you want to be involved? And the majority of people said no, because they thought that it wasn't really their place, or they didn't feel that they had the right knowledge or sort of confidence getting involved in marine decision making. And that was off the back of really fantastic long conversations with people all about their opinions about marine management, about the sea, like their connections with it. So it was quite surprising to sort of have so many people say that actually they didn't feel that marine planning was for them, or like marine decision making. So it sort of sparked the idea then for See the Connection as a project that would help to break down those barriers to people being involved in marine decision making, whether it was sort of education and knowledge building through ocean literacy, and trying to kind of nurture and that connection that people have with the sea. So obviously through different methods that we're looking at with See the Connection, in terms of sort of training and arts-based practices, and just different ways of sort of getting people connected to the sea, helping them to feel confident in getting involved in marine decision making, because it's so important that people realise that they are a stakeholder in marine decision making, that it is important for their voice to be heard. Of course, you have all the problems with consultation fatigue and people kind of feeling that they're not being heard. So it's trying to work out how we sort of break down those barriers a little bit.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of the really interesting stuff that See the Connection is doing in just a minute. You've used the term ocean literacy a couple of times. I think it's a brilliant term. But for those of us who are unfamiliar with it, what is ocean literacy all about?
Ocean literacy is a global concept. So it started in America in the 2000s as a concept developed by oceanographers and marine scientists in the US, that realised that education on marine issues was lacking in the United States at that time. And so they came up with this concept of ocean literacy, which is defined by UNESCO as the influence that people have on the ocean and the influence that the ocean has on us. So it's all about that kind of connection with the sea. There's quite a lot of literature around it in terms of, kind of breaking ocean literacy down into 7 principles, which were developed in the States as well. There's also dimensions of ocean literacy, 10 dimensions that have been formulated. So thinking about like activism, emotional connections, and knowledge. So kind of it's a much broader term than just kind of education and literacy and knowledge. It's that kind of broader connection, emotional activism, all of these different things. There's been a few ocean literacy strategies that have been developed. So Canada was one of the first ones to develop a national strategy for ocean literacy. Wales have just published one at the beginning of this year. And so it's quite an exciting time for having a project around ocean literacy in Scotland to start thinking about maybe developing a national strategy for Scotland. One part of the project is that we're setting up a Scottish Ocean Literacy Coalition to be able to start thinking about a national strategy, very much using Wales as the kind of example and like learning from what they've done. And we're also involved with conversations about a strategy for England as well. So very much trying to have that cross-border collaboration with all the national strategies.
The truth of the matter is, Ed, that a lot of people just don't realise quite how special Scotland's seas are and how important they are to lives as we know it. So, did you know that every second breath you take is thanks to phytoplankton? That's microscopic plant matter in our seas. Our oceans are so incredibly important to our way of life, from food security, energy, coastal protections, from climate change, which we know the impacts are growing. I could go on, and we really, really want to challenge people in this project to find their spark, is what we're starting to say. What is your connection to the sea? Discover your connection. And some people will be aware of their connection already, but by understanding and developing your ocean literacy, by developing that sort of cyclical, reciprocal relationship between you and the ocean, you're growing in yourself, and you're hopefully going to be impacting your local marine areas in a really positive way as well. And by connecting with lots of great initiatives happening, maybe locally or nationally or globally as well, because it is one ocean and there's a great deal we can do. And yeah, we're really, really excited about the opportunity to support people to find their ocean connection and, bring them on that journey. And I think that we've discussed so much about having worked with communities in such a great depth through Oceans of Value. We're well aware that there are some really stark inequalities when it comes to access to our seas and opportunities to even engage in decision making affecting the sea. There's so many barriers that people face through no fault of their own. And really what we're trying to do is to break down those barriers and use the feedback that people have given us. People have quite literally told us the problems and also the solutions that they want to see to be better connected with marine decision making and with their local marine area. So yeah, we have a complete guide practically, written by communities through Oceans of Value. And now it's about implementing that, and it's about demonstrating the impact of inclusive and accessible opportunities.
Yes, I love this idea that it's listening to communities, talking to people who live on the coast and are affected by these decisions. That we're going to talk to them, understand the problems, and then we're going to work with them to kind of get through that and overcome those barriers. I want to talk a bit more about the advocacy work in a second, but I'm conscious there's a lot of kind of work going on with communities. Eloise, could you just talk a bit more about some of the kind of projects and programs that you've got going on within the See the Connection project?
So we're working in sort of two fashions generally. The first one is with people who maybe don't have a strong connection to the sea, who we know have a greater barrier to accessing and enjoying the sea. We've learned there's a great number of people and demographics of people that fall into that bracket of having those greater challenges. One example I could give you is we're working on a Snorkeling for All programme, which is really exciting, which is taken off in the Moray Firth area. And what we're looking to do through Snorkeling for All is to champion the benefits and accessibility of snorkeling for people who have disabilities. We're working with disability experts, and we're also bringing together water sports enthusiasts and instructors as well. There's so many fantastic partners who are part of developing this program of work. And yeah, we're really, really excited to showcase, what snorkeling looks like in reality, and how we all take very adaptive and different approaches. And yeah, some other aspects of our work. So we're working with, as I say, groups of people who are lesser heard at a policy level. Another aspect of that is Gaelic voices. So, we learned through Oceans of Value that Gaelic speakers and Gaelic communities often feel that their cultural values aren't taken into account at a policy level. And this can lead to a great deal of frustration and upset and just feeling removed from the conversation. So what we're trying to do is work closely with communities around, in particular, Argyll and the Isles, and also in the Outer Hebrides as well, particularly Lewis and Harris, to try and support Gaelic voice inclusion in marine policy. A big message we're getting back is that, a lot of Gaelic voices and people, they feel the arts are a really authentic way to communicate, through music and storytelling and song, all sorts of other creative approaches. So it's been a big learning curve for us as well. We've been listening to people, listening to what they like, how they want to engage with the sea, and how they want to be heard in marine decision making. And now we're developing some really exciting projects around storytelling. For example, on Arran, we have a storytelling event with the wonderful storyteller Marty Ross. It's taking us on a magical journey into Arran Seas, and we're working with Coast in that as well. That's the Community of Arran Seabed Trust. And we're also working with students at the University of Stornoway to support their music programme and provide some marine policy training to hopefully inspire some songs of the sea.
As part of the project, we've talked a lot about kind of some of that first bit, finding that connection and helping them kind of get involved in that decision of the policy making. What sort of advocacy work and policy work have we got going on at a higher level? I'm going to come to you on that one, Rebecca.
So a huge area of work for us at the moment is marine protected areas. So we saw a consultation on fisheries management measures for offshore MPAs. That was last year. The measures that were proposed were for around 20 different sites. So basically, the marine protected areas around Scotland are split into offshore and inshore based on their distance from the land, basically. So the offshore MPAs were consulted on first. As I say, that was last year. The options given were full site protection from fisheries activity, or a zoned approach where certain types of gear would be allowed in certain areas of the marine protected area. And so we had a decision from government this year to say that the zoned approach was going to be taken, which we had advocated for the whole site approach. Obviously, being a nature charity, we felt that marine protected areas should mean that they're protected from all activity. And we're awaiting a consultation on the inshore marine protected areas this year. So we are expecting it in November this year. That's what we've heard from government. And it'll be quite a long consultation period for this one because it is vastly more sites than what was in the offshore consultation. And it's going to be quite a complex one. So it's one that we're really focusing on in terms of our community work. So making sure that we're communicating the options, whatever they turn out to be. We haven't seen the detail yet, but making sure that we're communicating the case for it as well as to why these measures are so important. We're really conscious that we put across the important message that these measures are long overdue. So it's been nearly a decade now that the government has been meant to have management measures in place for marine protected areas. So that's why this consultation is so important. This is a really long time coming, waiting for these management measures to be put in place, because at the moment you can obviously there's still activities that are allowed to go on within marine protected areas. They're not fully protected. While we do have quite a high percentage of marine protected areas in Scotland, the fact that they don't have management measures means, they're not fully protected at this time. So we're working on a sort of comms program to go over that period, just to kind of help break down some of the information and put that case across as to why it's so important, especially as we're facing the twin nature and climate crises at the moment. Our seas are becoming such a busier space, and also the habitats and species that these MPAs protect are often very long lived. They're very sensitive to damage. They can take a long time to recover. There's also the issue of connectivity as well. So having protected areas actually protected, allowing things to thrive and recover, can also be really beneficial to the wider coast and seas. Obviously, seas connected, there is evidence of where we protect our MPs, they can become nursery grounds for commercial species of fish. Like there are reasons from an industry point of view or a kind of development point of view as to why MPs should be fully protected, and that's why we believe at Scottish Wildlife Trust that it should be a full site approach. We all want a sustainable marine environment at the end of the day. People who make money from the sea, who make their livelihoods from the sea, they also need a healthy marine environment. So if we can provide these areas where we can have recovery and we can have restoration, then that can only benefit the rest of the marine environment as well. So it's not a kind of conservation versus development. It's thinking, how do we reach that sustainable development goal that we all have, where we have a thriving, healthy marine environment? It has to start with protection, and it has to start with taking care of what we have and making sure that we're protecting it.
That's, I think, a fantastic point to kind of bring this to a close, really. Thank you both so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating. We could probably talk about this for an awful lot longer. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ed. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
So that was Eloise and Rebecca telling us all about the fantastic work that is happening as part of See the Connection. I should also mention that they have fairly recently launched a new snorkel trail website. If you haven't already, absolutely go and check it out. There's so much information on there. There's information on all the different trails and the whole network, so you can find your local snorkel trail. There's FAQs about snorkeling, a guide to some of the wildlife you can see, as well as some kind of snorkeling safety tips. It's a fantastic resource. Please do go and check it out. There'll be a link in the episode description below. But there is so much work happening as part of that See the Connection project. There's the Snorkeling for All, making snorkeling accessible to people with disabilities, the work with the Gaelic communities, particularly in the islands, the Hebrides, as well as the work with artists to create these snorkeling-inspired pieces. It's just fantastic. There's so much stuff. And I just love this idea that the project is helping people right from finding their connection to the sea all the way through to being involved in marine policy decision-making. It's just such a fantastic way of working. It's brilliant, really brilliant.
Yeah, what a fantastic project. As always, encourage everyone to get out snorkeling if you can. And that leads nicely onto our last segment of today. It's going to be our Day in the Life segment, and we're going to be chatting with Johnny McMillan, who's one of our Trust's young leaders. So our young leaders are a volunteer group of young people aged 18 to 30 who help represent young voices in the work of the Trust. So they get up to loads of fun things, from campaigning to engagement to sitting in on committee meetings. And our young leaders have been working really closely with the Living Seas team on this See the Connection project. And they've been helping, our young leaders have been helping to sort of amplify young voices in the marine policy space, which can sometimes be lacking. And the Living Seas team have been doing some fantastic work of kind of breaking that policy down for our young people to get involved. So I joined Johnny on Eyemouth Beach right before a beautiful snorkel from one of the snorkel trails. We joined some other young leaders and got into the water. And just to confirm, we did record this in June. We are not that hardy. We have not gone out in the kind of autumn, winter time. I don't recommend that. But yeah, it was a lovely day. And here's Johnny to tell us a little bit more about being a young leader. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what your go-to morning beverage is to start your day?
I'm Johnny, so I'm a Scottish Wildlife Trust young leader. I'm just about to turn 27, so I'm very grateful that you still consider me young. But my morning brew is a coffee, and I'm very particular about that. I always have a coffee out of my mocha pot, bit of milk, and a little bit of honey, because I like to pretend the honey is better for me than the sugar.
Oh, nice. I do love a mocha pot myself. So can you tell us a little bit about what the young leaders are?
So young leaders, we are a very fantastic, if I do say so myself, group of volunteers. We're aged between 18 and 30, and our job is to engage with young people and people throughout conservation worlds. So maybe folk that are a bit more established, a bit more later stage careers as well. So our job is to bring young people into decision making and to make sure that young people are not left silent. So we work on a number of projects and events that aim to bring the youth closer to nature. We were founded in 2018, which was the Year of Young People in Scotland, and we've been growing a lot since then. a fantabulous group of young people that come from a whole range of different work and professional student backgrounds.
Amazing. Fantabulous. How long have you been a young leader for?
Just over 2 years. So I think I joined in April 2023.
Nice.
Yeah.
The time does fly. So what can a day as a young leader look like typically?
Honestly, I don't really know. You make what you want of it. There's a lot of flexibility that I've found to explore your own interests. So I've been particularly interested in doing a lot of the marine side of things. So there's been space for me to explore that. And yeah, but you can definitely, you make what you want of it, and you can dip your toes into things that you're not quite so familiar with. So we've been doing a lot of marine engagement projects, which has taken us to different events, and we also get to have a lot of fun days out on reserves, learning about conservation work that happens throughout the Scottish Wildlife Trust. But there's definitely not one day. You make what you want for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that sounds great. And so within that, has there been, say, a particular piece of work or particular project that you've been most proud of as a young leader?
Yeah, that's quite tricky. I mean, for me, I really enjoyed and was quite proud of the engagement work that we did at the Voices of the Sea event at the National Museum of Scotland a year and a half ago, something like that. But yeah, I was really proud of that because I felt like the opinions that we were gathering from people was actually going on to inform policy for the National Marine Plan too. And it got me myself thinking a lot more about the marine world, which has gone on to maybe inform some of the decisions I've made about sort of my own life trajectory as well. So I'm quite proud of that one.
Brilliant. And so I guess kind of coming alongside that, so that sounds like a really memorable kind of moment within the young leaders, but have you got another kind of most memorable wildlife encounter that you've had?
Yeah, so when I was at uni, I was really lucky. I had a professor who would take a bunch of students out for sailing trips in the Hebrides. I was lucky to join for a couple of those trips, other than when COVID kind of ruined us and grounded us a little bit. My strong marine-based memory in Scotland is sailing past Canna, where there's an absolutely massive seabird colony of all sorts, like puffins and razorbills and gannets, and birds are just absolutely everywhere, and it's so loud. There's about 20,000 birds there, and it's just insane how loud it is. And just everywhere you look in the water, there's just birds diving. So that's a really, really strong memory for me.
That's a cool experience. I do love the Hebrides. Definitely one of my favourite places to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have a favourite sort of Scottish kind of coastal or marine species?
I'm going to say 2.
Ooh.
Yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to shout out the humble sand eel, which the fishing of these has just been banned in all Scottish waters. They're a really key component of our marine food web, and our seabirds like puffins would not be able to survive without them. But I also have a real soft spot for grey seals, and I love the sort of intelligent looking into your soul that they give you when they stare at you from the water.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah. Have you ever seen a seal when you're snorkeling?
Yeah, well, I've seen a seal diving off the coast of Kirkcaldy. Like, I was just about to go up, and the seal just started staring at me through a bunch of kelp, and it was, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
really annoying when they stare at you.
I guess they're like the sea, they're like the dogs of the sea, aren't they?
They absolutely are.
They're so cute.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of on the kind of marine train now, why do you think it's important for young people to get involved in marine policy and marine conservation?
Well, we are going to inherit the sea, and the health of the sea underpins the health of our planet and all of us. We rely on it. It gives us most of the oxygen that we breathe. And if we want to have an ocean that we can benefit from and that we can play in and live in a world with just a healthy functioning environment, then we need to look after it. And to do that, we need to engage in policy.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any advice for young people that are maybe kind of keen to dip their toe in marine policy, but they're not too sure where to start?
Yes, so definitely check out Alan Munro, who is the marine young people policy guru. So he founded Young Sea Changers Scotland, and Young Sea Changers Scotland is probably the best place to start in that team that they've built there. They do a lot of work in breaking down the jargon in marine policy. And also something that I found as well myself is don't be afraid to get over to marine conferences and events and just learn a little bit more, because you'll find that there needs to be more young people there, and it's a really good learning opportunity.
Yeah, I've seen there's been quite the trend with these kind of events, like offering sort of concession tickets and encouraging young people to get along. So yeah, always encourage folk to go, and you'll likely see probably one of the young leaders there. Which is good.
Absolutely. See, Scotland conference is coming up, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Do you have a favourite place to go and connect with nature?
Yeah, so it's got to be the sea. Like I love the outdoors in general, but I just love being out swimming, paddling, snorkeling. It just gives me a real sense of calm. So love the sea. Yeah. Can't get out of it.
Is there anything coming up for the young leaders that you are kind of most looking forward to?
Yeah, so excited for a lot more of our marine projects coming up. There's been a lot of talk about designing a snorkel trail. We'll want to get that pushed through. I want to get some of that done, but that's going to be if we can do that, that's going to be a really fun project.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like, right in your expertise for skills. So what's something you always have when you're out and about, whether, it's with the young leaders or in your kind of other snorkeling and spare time?
Reusable coffee cup. Yeah, gotta have it. Have it. And also a bit gross, but tick tweezers, unfortunately.
A must in Scotland. Yeah,
unfortunately.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Johnny, for taking the time to have a chat with us.
So a huge thank you again to Johnny for chatting there. I tagged along for the recording. It was a lovely sunny day for the most part. I think it rained for about 5 minutes in the morning, but the rest of the day was glorious sunshine. So massive thanks to Johnny there. I always enjoy talking to our young leaders. I think they're such an inspiring group of people doing some fantastic stuff, and it always gives me a nice kind of sense of hope that conservation is in good hands when I talk to those guys. What are we going to be talking about in the next episode, Rachel?
So we are going to be taking a bit of a closer look to home, speaking to some of our Trust staff and volunteers that really make up what we do here at the Trust, and we're going to hear about some different things that they've been getting up to on the ground.
Brilliant. That's exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to that one. A huge thank you to everyone who has taken a listen to this episode. As always, if you would like to get in touch, please do. You can reach us via email at communications@scottishwildlifetrust.org.uk. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got comments or questions, please do just drop us a line. Always great to hear from our listeners. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll hopefully see you in the next episode.